Victoria, it's lovely to be speaking to you.
Lovely to see you again as well, Amalia. Thank you.
Great. And so we're going to be talking today about, is now a good time to sell your family business?
That's right, yeah.
So, in the community of over 3 million family businesses in the UK, there will be lots of people who are thinking about their exit, who have been thinking about their exit for the last couple of years. And perhaps this has, I don't know, sped up the process a little bit of their thinking, or perhaps they're thinking, I was going to do it in 2020, but now I'm just not sure if that's just an absolutely terrible, really stupid idea. So, this is what you guys do. You help owners sell their businesses. And I thought it'd be really insightful to be able to pick your brains. And for anyone who's thinking about, okay, well, I need to exit my business at some stage, is now a good time? Should I be holding on, etc.? So are you okay for me to pick your brains?
Absolutely, more than happy. Pick away. See if I can help.
So the first and probably most obvious question, is now a really stupid time to be thinking about selling your business?
It's never a stupid time to be thinking about it. It's a question of when you might press the button to do it. But always have that succession plan, possibly that exit plan in mind, because you don't know what's just around the corner. I think it was at your family business conference last year, actually, someone said, run your business as though you're going to sell it, but then once you get to a sale process, run it as though you're not selling it. It's a weird dichotomy in terms of the attitude and mindset one has to have. But you should always have that question in mind. Is now a good time? Is the business in good shape? Is this the right thing for me, for the business, for the employees, for my family? There are so many different factors at play. And yet, of course, it's worth asking that question. The answer will be different for everybody, depending on the answers to those. Those very personal and pertinent questions. In terms of the M&A environment at the moment, there are still things happening and activity is picking up out there at the moment. Yes, everything sort of dropped off a bit of a cliff at the back end of March and through April, as all of us were spinning plates and trying to get our heads into a very different space in terms of trying to furlough staff or keep things going, wondering what on earth was going to happen to all our revenues, our customers, everything like that. Now things have settled down somewhat. Some sectors are more adversely affected than others, but there is more happening out there. There is activity starting to pick up. More people are starting to ask that question, okay, what's the opportunity that I can see is coming out of this? So that it's not all, unfortunately, that there will be some casualties in terms of businesses that don't survive the hardships that COVID has brought on. But there are others where there will be significant opportunity coming out of this. And it's right that owner managers, family business owners should be thinking about what might the next steps be.
Okay, so that's a lot to think about in itself, actually. So if you throw into the mix then, I had a very healthy family business before COVID. We were ticking along quite nicely, maybe even making, profits going up year on year. All of a sudden, come March 2020, my business has just become a shell of its former self. And it feels like there's no value in that whatsoever. So what are your thoughts on that?
Again, that's something that every business needs to work through in terms of what does that recovery program look like? Is that going to be a bit of a V curve where things will pick up again very quickly? Is it going to be a longer, slower process? What visibility do you have now on that slow process through to recovery, to back where you were before, and then continuing to build on the historic performance and so on, and then starting to build up again? For everyone, it'll be a question of working through that and understanding what's that recovery look like. There have been some pundits talking about sort of multiples based or valuations based on EBITDAC rather than EBITDA, or sort of earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, amortization, and COVID. I don't think we're going to see that per se, but everyone looking at projections as a management information for this year, projections for the forward year, you need to look at accounting quite specifically for the COVID impact and things that have happened. Okay, why did things drop off, and can we quantify that? Because this year, one hopes, will be a bit of an anomaly. Do you know what I mean? And then things can pick up. Quite what sort of normal we will get back to, I don't think anyone's quite clear just yet. But we will get back to something where the economy is running, people's needs and requirements, that their purchases are going to come back to some sort of shape of what they were before. And it's a question of, for businesses, being agile enough to understand and look forward to what might that new normal look like on a more prolonged basis, and therefore does the business model need to evolve to keep pace with that, to match changes in consumer habits or other buying habits from your previous client base, or can you tap into a different client or customer base based on this new world and how things are going to look going forward? Does that answer that to an extent?
Yeah, and you touched on projections. Now, in a normal world, it was quite easy to project because you could base it on, you know, the last 2-3 years, and you could see that things were picking up. How do you project when there's so much uncertainty around how consumers and businesses are going to start buying again?
It's a very good question, and it's not easily answered. There's no quick fix to how one can project the next 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. Every business will be different, and it's making sure that one can identify quite clearly what are the assumptions that you're making as you make those projections. So what are your assumptions about revenues coming back in, and then your costs coming in under that? Have you furloughed staff? Are you bringing them back? How does your working capital cycle start to build up again? And do you have cash flow support for that? For instance, people who've got CID, confidential invoice discounting facilities, those are all well and good when you've got a nice healthy debtor book that's being generated by continuous sales. Where sales have dropped off, your debtor book has dropped away, that cash flow facility will have diminished right down. If you don't have that already in place, because as your sales pick up, the availability of that facility will pick up again. If you don't already have something like that in place, then it's going to be very hard to get, because you're trying to get a facility off the back of very reduced sales. But as you go forward, it's important to identify the assumptions that are going to be behind those forecasts, so that if you are looking for support, anyone can test those and sensitize them. You can look at what's your worst case scenario and build up from there, because then you can layer on the positives all the time, knowing what you've got to safeguard and keep as a baseline and to build up from.
So if you know that realistically the next 12 months you're never going to be back at your fighting weight as a business, but you still think, okay, I want to sell my business in the next 12-18 months, what realistically can you expect from potential buyers, and what sort of things are they going to interrogate about your business now?
Buyers are always going to want to try to look at the lowest case scenario, because of course they want the best deal they can get. Historically, we see, or we have seen, buyers who try to take an average of the last 3 years results, especially for a growing business. They don't want to pay forward on upside that's yet to be realized, and how much faith can they put in that continued growth. If it's a projection, especially if you've got quite big jumps in growth and profitability, and this is where we are today, and you're projecting that for next year, well, they're going to want to put something on today's results, sort of proven results, rather than all the future. And a lot of buyers will say, well, hang on, let's take an average of the last 3 years, apply a multiple to that, a few adjustments here and there, and so on. That doesn't mean that they won't suddenly say, well, actually, this year's results are down on the last 3 years because of COVID, therefore we want to give you a multiple just based on this. Any scrupulous buyer, and let's face it, when we're talking about buying and selling businesses, a big part of it is trying to match up the right buyer for the right seller. So there's a meeting of minds. We're talking about continuity for a business, an appreciation for not just the assets that are there, but the goodwill, the ethos of that family business that's been built up over many years, quite possibly many generations. If you find that right buyer, they are still going to be looking to give you proper value for it. What I do expect to change is some of the structures for acquisitions in terms of payment structures. So they'll say, well, okay, you're saying that next year is going to recover to this level again, or possibly even higher than what you were first projecting for this year. I'll pay you this amount now, but the rest of it's going to be an element of deferred or earn out consideration on the top if you want that full value. A lot of buyers will try that anyway. These days it's fairly rare to get 100% of your cash on day one. It does happen, but it's not all the time, because the buyers do want to see what they're getting, make sure the value is intrinsically there. And especially if there is upside, they want to see that starting to come through before they pay for it. So I would expect to see more people saying, well, actually, we'll pay you over a longer period of time, just to see whether this real value that you say is there is going to come back.
Okay, so a couple of things. Are there still buyers out there buying businesses at the moment?
There are still transactions going through. Now, some of those are left over from pre-lockdown that have taken a while to go through and are happening. I think there are fewer that have been originated in the last couple of months, but there's much more noise now around people saying, well, actually, we know that there are going to be opportunities, and we're going to start actively looking for those opportunities to buy them coming out the other side of lockdown. We know that other businesses in our sector may be struggling. We know that some people are just going to want to get out. They've had enough. They don't want to weather another storm. And so acquirers will be putting themselves on a sound footing to make their moves and to start to look for things.
Okay, so putting you on the spot here a little bit, but are there maybe 3 or 4 things that look really attractive as a business right now? So if I'm a family business out there watching this video, and you say to me, well, actually, if you can make sure you tick these 3 boxes, it's a good starting place. So there are 3 common denominators that make a really attractive business at the moment.
Gosh, 3. The sector that you're in will have a lot to do with it right now. And of course, that's something you can't control. You can't suddenly change what sector you're in. So that's a slightly unfair one to say in some respects. But there are some sectors that have weathered this fairly well. They've continued to be resilient. Certain manufacturing, healthcare, pharmaceuticals, tech businesses, they've done really well through all of this because they've been less impacted. Other businesses, obviously anything in the hospitality, leisure, retail, have really, really suffered. So they're going to struggle more to look attractive in this environment anyway. And it's possible that some of the acquirers out there are not going to be quite so active in those spaces at the moment, unless they were really sound and just waiting for the right moment to grow and really push forward with an acquisition strategy anyway. But having really clear management accounts information is going to be important, so that's up to date, really clear records of what's happened, map the impact of COVID really, really clearly. And in terms of your expectations for the next 6-12 months, projecting those carefully and having a really clear cash flow projection to monitor that cash flow over the next little while, and show how stable, how safe that's going to be. Those are 2 things, so those management information and the cash flow going forward. And then slightly more esoteric, I suppose, in some respects, is the mindset of an owner manager. If you've decided that you want out, then you can start taking more proactive steps to deliver that. And the more preparation you can do for that, the better. And I think we may well see quite a spate of businesses coming to the market later in the year as people do make these decisions. And some people might be hanging back at the moment, not quite sure whether the time is right or not. Ask the questions of people around you. You don't have to be an island as an owner manager. Do you know what I mean? You're not there on your own, although it can feel like that at times. But if you've got advisors around you who you can use as a sounding board and say, okay, I'm not sure about this, I'm not sure about that, I've got staff on furlough at the moment, some of my revenues are coming back, but not all of them yet, key contracts I know won't be on board until X date. We're all still looking into a crystal ball slightly at the moment and wondering what the hell's going to come out of this. I think a lot of people are still viewing September as being a bit of a crunch time when hopefully the children will all go back to school, and that will help more of the workforce come back, more things pick up, etc. But you don't have to be an island for wondering whether this is the right thing to do, and asking advisors about what steps should I be taking to make sure that if I'm going to sell my business, it stands above the rest in terms of how it can be perceived by a buyer. and starting to take those steps. That's really important, because once you're in that mindset as a seller, as an owner manager, as a family business owner, it makes the whole process more straightforward down the line if you're actively looking to say, well, okay, I'm going to make this the best I can possibly be, or best it can possibly be. And of course, over the years, anyone will do that with their business anyway, because there's a huge amount of pride and joy that goes into making those businesses and growing them from not a lot. When it comes to selling, there's a shift in mindset that's very hard to do, but if you can do it, it can make things a lot easier, because the emotions can be quite different. If you can shift from being an owner to sort of, okay, how do I perceive my business from the perspective of an investor? So this is an asset that I'm looking to realize. Then it can shift how you perceive different things within the business. It's always going to be personal. Do you know what I mean? A process such as a sale. But if you can take some of the emotion out of it, then that can help that preparatory phase, and actually making it look good to someone on the other side of the fence.
Actually, that's a very good point, because I think if you can step back and look from it as an outsider, as a potential buyer, even if you're not thinking about selling it in the next 12, 18 months, that's a really good strategy for actually, you know, shoring up your business anyway. Okay, so what do our finances look like? What does our marketing look like? Have we got our recurring contracts, you know, zipped up? And have we got people bought in? And all of those things that investors are going to look for, or buyers are going to look for, actually make really good sound advice for a business moving forward coming through this anyway.
Yeah,
it's a really good exercise to undertake. So if I could ask you then, what are the main things people should be looking at? Obviously, their accounting, which I think we've all become acutely aware of our finances to the nearest penny these days.
Yes.
So you said get some really clear management accounts.
Yes,
Is there
absolutely.
things around brand and marketing and reputation?
Definitely, and I think that's one of those things that's really come to the fore, or sort of been highlighted even more over the last few months as well, is the reputational side of how different businesses and different people have dealt with this crisis. Now, that's something that can't be changed necessarily now, but in terms of how do you want your brand to be perceived, what have you done to raise the profile of that historically? Is that still relevant? Does it need updating for this new world, this new normal? Have the values in the brand changed at all? Do they need to be updated? Then yes, all of those things can help with the identity of the business, because a buyer is going to want to see that a business has, or what is the identity of that business, and is it going to gel well with what I've already got? Is it going to fit in well to my culture, my structure? And it goes back to trying to find the right pairing for a buyer and seller, not just someone who'll pay the highest price.
Yeah, okay. And so perhaps something else people might look at is your data. So we all hold data on our customers, our clients, our suppliers. A lot of people will still have that on a spreadsheet or some sort of CRM, and actually it's a really good chance to get all of that in ship-shape condition, isn't it?
Definitely. I mean, any sort of housekeeping that you do around your employees, around your branding, your contracts, your customer database, all of that sort of thing is really invaluable time spent at the moment. Especially if you are looking towards a sale in the not too distant future, because the more that one has in good order now, the easier that process is down the line, because of course any buyer is going to want to scrutinize all of that stuff and make sure that it's in good order.
Okay, so if I'm thinking right now, yeah, do you know what? I've seen my business through this and I've realised I don't want to do this again. I think I've got a good business to sell. Do I need to wait another 12 months? Do I need another cycle on my accounts, or can I start the conversation now?
Start the conversation now. One of the big things that we do with any client is talk about timings, and timings will be different for everyone. There are still, I mean, less so these days, because the world of remote working and so on has broken down some of the old barriers in terms of timings as to when to launch a business for sale. But there are still certain times of year that are better than others. Don't launch a business for sale in December, for instance. Do you know what I mean? Half your audience isn't going to be there. Same in July and August, really. But it's always a question of sorting out timing, understanding understanding what a client wants, and depending on what the client's expectations are in terms of value, and whether they say, well, actually, I'm going to hold out for a bit longer because I want a larger check on completion and less to be contingent, so I'll stick it out to try and bolster that day one consideration. Or actually, I just want to be at the front of the queue for buyers to look at this. I've had enough. I need to step back for whatever reasons, whether it's health reasons, what have you. And therefore, I am prepared to accept that there might be a lesser check on day one, a more drawn out payment period that might be outside of my control, but I'm happy with that. I can base my expectations around that.
Okay, all right. So the subject of selling the family jewels is a really difficult one for anyone who runs a family business, whether it's, 10th generation or whether you started it with your wife and it's been your blood, sweat and tears the last 20 years. It's a difficult conversation to have in your own mind, let alone with the outside world. And you will have employees who are already terrified of losing their jobs, who are already a little bit shaky, thinking, am I going to see this through? So I think a lot of people will feel, and quite rightly, a bit nervous, a bit anxious about even having that conversation about selling the family business. But there are plenty of places you go, like you guys at Castle Corporate Finance, where you can just go and have a chat with someone like you to say, okay, this is my business, this is what it looks like. Is it something worth selling, and how do I even get started?
Exactly that. And it's all about starting the conversation. And we're quite an open and friendly bunch. So we know that it's a hugely emotive topic. There's no black and white answer. Do you know what I mean? It's not a question of red or black, do or die. There are so many different factors involved, and it's starting that conversation and understanding a bit more about what's involved in it, in the process. What do you need to get prepared for, and what can you expect at the other end of it? And with our experience, we can talk you through what we're seeing in the market, expectations on valuation, where there might be holes in the information that could have a negative impact. But I also identify here what are the key value drivers for your particular business that will drive up interest, and is it in a sector where we're seeing activity at the moment? All these sorts of things. Do we know buyers in the market? Do we know people who are backing buyers in this space? Until you have that, start having that conversation, understanding the breadth of options and opportunity that might be out there is very hard to get a handle on.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so going forward then, for anyone watching this video who's thinking this might be an option for me either now or later down the line, the thing is to get your house in order. So to use this downtime to sort out your housekeeping, your data, your marketing, your accounts, all of those things that you want to have a handle on anyway as you sort of relaunch and restart your business in the new world, is to go and have a chat with your advisors, to take those first steps in preparing a business and getting it into shipshape position, and know that it's okay just to have a conversation about it. And I think a lot of people don't think about is the family business perhaps is just a vehicle for that family's wealth. It's just the platform you're using at the moment, and selling the family business may be the right thing so that you can go and do something else together. You might start another family business together. You might become investors. You might be able to provide for all of your children, and the family business is just a vehicle. And I don't think all that guilt needs to be, attached to it with selling the family jewels.
You're so right. And that's exactly the kind of mindset that one needs to have. But it is very difficult to have that. It's really hard. And if you have a conversation, that doesn't mean that you're starting down that route. That doesn't mean that you're at the top of the ski slope and you can't stop. Do you know what I mean? It's just about exploring what are the options, and is now the right time to start to explore those.
Okay, lovely. So if anyone wants to have a chat with you, they're more than welcome to give you guys a call.
Absolutely. Yeah, of course.
Thank you so much for your time. It's really useful, because as business owners, particularly family business owners, we would have been thinking about all sorts of things over the last 10, 12 weeks. Every option would have gone through our mind. And one minute we love our business, and another minute we're like, we can't do this anymore. Someone take it off our hands. So I think it's important that you're able to explore all options really with good trusted advisors that can help you.
Absolutely. And I mean, certainly anyone who speaks to us, we have lots of conversations with people who are then not ready to sell, and they might not be ready for 6 months, 12 months, 2-3 years. We try and keep in touch with people gradually over time, build up that trust, that level of communication, so that if or when they decide that, okay, yes, this is where we do want to go, we already have an intrinsic understanding of not only their business, but them as individuals. What are they trying to achieve? What do they want out of this ultimately? And it's a really important step to start to build up that communication and just see what there might be at the end of the tunnel. As you say, it's not a question of, okay, well, if I sell the business, I've got nothing left. No, you've got an opportunity to do something else. And it's all about perceiving what's the opportunity here and now. And is it the right time to seize that?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time, Victoria.
Pleasure. Lovely to speak to you. Thank you.